Shall we pray? Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness has appointed the office of rulers and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of men and women, we beseech you to behold with your abundant favor us, your servants, whom you have called to the performance of important trust in these islands. Father, let your blessing descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we may treat and consider all matters that shall come under our deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of these islands and of those whose interest you have committed to our charge. And this we beg in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen. Please be seated. Item number 2, confirmation of minutes of the 2nd of July, 2025. Vice President John White, you have the floor.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, 2nd July 2025 be taken as read.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Madam President, I move that the minutes of Wednesday, 2nd July 2025 be confirmed.
Is there any objection to the confirmation of the minutes? No, no objection. The minutes are confirmed. Thank you, Vice President John White. Item number 3, messages, Mrs. Beal.
There are no messages, Madam President.
Thank you. Item number 4, reports of committee. There are none. Item number 5, announcements. I would just like to advise senators that we've had apologies from Senator Cunningham, who is traveling. So she's not here today. And another announcement then is in the name of Senator Misha Fabler, the Junior Minister for Public Works and the Environment. Senator Fabler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I hereby present the information of the Senate, the Water Resources Prevention of Pollution by Sewage from Boats Amendment Regulations 2025, as made by the Minister responsible for the environment in exercise of the power conferred by Section 39 of the Water Resources Act 1975. Senators may access copies on their tablets or the Parliament website. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fabler. Item number 6, notices of motion, there are none. Item number 7, petitions, there are none. Item number 7, statements. Senators, we have 4 statements this morning. An additional one is the 4th one that you will be advised, and that is in the name of Minister Wilkinson regarding a consultation launch on the proposed amendments to the Proceeds of Crime Act. So the first statement then is in the name of Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, Minister of Education. Minister Caesar, you have the floor.
Good morning, Madam President. Morning to the listening audience and morning colleagues. Madam President, I am honored to announce and celebrate this year's recipients of the Ministry of Education scholarships and awards. Today's statement is more than a report. It is a celebration of merit and affirmation of equitable access, and a commitment to ensuring that these opportunities continue to reflect the best of who we are and who we aspire to become. The Ministry of Education upholds its mandate to support post-secondary and graduate education for Bermudian students. Therefore, we are committed to improving access to higher education for Bermuda's aspiring students through scholarships and awards opportunities. Madam President, one of the goals of the platform commitments for 2025 is to expand access to funding for Bermudians to obtain tertiary education. I am proud to confirm that the budget for this year's scholarships and awards is $1.77 million. The ministry believes that all students should have access to post-secondary education, and we are pleased to provide scholarships and awards for the benefit of students and the Bermudian community. Madam President, each year, through our scholarship and awards programs, we recognize and uplift those individuals who have demonstrated promise, resilience, and excellence. These recipients are not only students and scholars, they are future leaders, innovators, educators, and contributors to our island's growth and prosperity. This year's awardees have shown perseverance and determination to reach their passions and cultivate their talents. They also have hearts of service and intend on contributing to Bermuda upon completion of their degrees. Madam President, I am proud to announce that the ministry will help more than 60 individuals to attend college and university through the various scholarships and awards that we offer. This year, the Ministry of Education is providing 10 different scholarships and award categories. In addition to the Bermuda College Promise, which provides tuition for graduates of Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute to attend Bermuda College tuition free for 2 years, the ministry grants the following scholarships and awards annually. The first is the Minister's Achievement Scholarship to high achieving graduating students of Cedar Bridge Academy and the Barclay Institute attend overseas post-secondary education. Exceptional Student Award for graduating students or school leavers with disabilities for local or overseas study. The third is the Minister's Technical and Vocational Award for graduating public school students or recent public school alumni attending Bermuda College for both local and overseas post-secondary study. The fourth is the Further Education Award for current college or university students with sophomore standing for continued post-secondary study. The Non-Traditional Student Award for persons aged 25 and over pursuing post-secondary study. The Teacher Education Scholarship is for current students studying in college or university with sophomore standing for the study of selected subjects and or subject areas of teaching in need in Bermuda in the public school system. The Bermuda Government Scholarship is for well-rounded senior school or college university students up to the age of 25, who demonstrate outstanding academic achievement. The University of the West Indies Scholarship is for graduates or and undergraduates who have been accepted to the University of the West Indies at any of their campuses or other universities within the Caribbean. And the Bermuda College Book Award Program provides funding for books for Bermuda College students in financial need. And this award is determined by the Bermuda College closer to the start of the academic year. The final scholarship is the Minister's Applied Science Scholarship, and it's for graduating public senior school students who attended the Applied Technology Dual Enrollment Diploma Program with Bermuda College and who plan to continue to that program to obtain an associate's degree. I'm sad to report, unfortunately, this particular award had no applications this year. Nonetheless, Madam President, a total of 524 students were submitted for consideration. A total of 71 students ranging from the recent senior school graduates to mature students pursuing non-traditional pathways are among our worthy recipients. And I would like to highlight many of those students in a number of different categories, beginning with the Minister's Scholarships. The Minister's Scholarships and Awards are valued at $7,500 for local studies and up to $25,000 for overseas studies. They are tenable for the duration of the student's full-time postgraduate program of study for up to 4 years. The recipients are for the Minister's Achievement Scholarship, Shia Bean, a 2025 graduate of Cedar Bridge Academy. She is pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing and Communication at Dalhousie University. And also Kamaya Matthew, a 2025 graduate of the Barclay Institute. She is pursuing a Bachelor's of Business Administration at Howard University. For the Minister's Exceptional Student Award, valued at $7,500 for local studies and up to $25,000 for overseas studies. Talrika Butterfield, a graduate of Bermuda College. She's pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Child and Youth Study at Mount St. Vincent University. Malachi Santucci Smith, a graduate of the Care Learning Center. He is pursuing an Associate's of Art at the Bermuda College. For the Technical and Vocational Award, the first student is Milan Powell, a graduate of Bermuda College, and she is currently or will be pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Nursing at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, or A&M as is commonly known. Nyasia White, also a recipient of an award, is a graduate of the Barclay Institute to pursue a Bachelor's of Nursing at the University of South Carolina. And Maya Dean, a graduate of the Barclay Institute, and she's pursuing a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration and Management at North Carolina A&T University. Other recipients that I am proud to announce to the Senate are for the Non-Traditional Student Award, which is $20,000 per year for overseas study up to 4 years. Delaire Trott Richardson, a graduate of the Berkeley Institute, and he's pursuing a bachelor's degree in physics at the University of Sussex. And Adonijah Washington, a graduate of Bermuda College, pursuing a bachelor's in sports rehabilitation at Health Sciences University. The recipients of the Teacher Education Scholarship, again, $20,000 per year for overseas study for up to 4 years. And the recipients are Mariah Bridgewater, a graduate of Bermuda College. She's pursuing a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education at Howard University. And Stephen Dill, a graduate of the Berkeley Institute, pursuing a Master's of Teaching at Winston-Salem State University. These teacher education scholarships are given to candidates pursuing their initial teacher training, who, as a condition of their scholarships, will be employed in the Bermuda Public Schools to educate and support public school students in subjects and teaching areas of great need in the public education system. Madam President, the ministry awarded a total of 42 further education awards for undergraduate studies, 10 awards for students pursuing graduate studies, and 5 for students pursuing doctoral degrees. And these awards will provide funding for 1 year of study at a value of up to $10,000 each. While further education awards and other scholarships and awards are primarily given to students pursuing undergraduate study to assist persons in getting a first college or university degree, the ministry is continuing to do what it can to support students undertaking graduate studies. Some of the areas of study for undergraduate recipients are health sciences, education, psychology, performing arts, business, and engineering, while some of the areas for study for postgraduate recipients include legal studies, public health, medicine, teacher training, and psychology. Time does not permit me to name each recipient, but they too are saluted for their perseverance towards the completion of their undergraduate and graduate degrees. Madam President, the University of West Indies Scholarship provides an opportunity for students seeking tertiary education at the University of the West Indies or another school in the Caribbean region in the amount of $7,500 per year for up to 3 years of study. This year's recipient, Ms. Kieja Burchell Busby, is studying medicine at St. George's University in Grenada. And Madam President, I now speak about the Bermuda government scholarships, which are awarded annually to the most deserving candidates recommended by the Board of Education. Each Bermuda government scholarship recipient receives funding towards the cost of tuition and accommodation up to $35,000 per year for 4 years. I am pleased to share with this House that this year's recipients of the Bermuda government scholarships are Alay Burgess Rocker, a graduate of the Berkeley Institute, to pursue a bachelor's degree in actuarial science at St. John's University, and Neve Barkley, another Berkeley Institute graduate, to pursue a bachelor's degree in accounting at North Carolina A&T State University. The recommendation to award both Ms. Alay Burgess Rocker and Ms. Neve Barkley the Bermuda Government Scholarship is truly historic, as both young women are S3 students graduating early. This is a rare achievement, and it highlights not only their individual excellence, but they're also their shared determination, vision, and sense of purpose. These 2 young women represent the future of Bermuda, which is bright, ambitious, grounded in service, and prepared to make a difference. Madam President, I would like to thank the senior school staff, mentors, parents, guardians, and loved ones of our students for supporting them through this scholarship process. Their unwavering support and guidance have been instrumental in the success of our students. As this process requires a great investment of time, I thank and commend the chairperson and members of the Scholarship and Awards Committee who spend countless hours poring over applications to make difficult decisions deciding which of the many deserving students will be successful. the Scholarship and Awards Program Manager, Ms. Shanae Smith, for so ably receiving, sorting, and vetting the many applications, and also the rest of the Ministry of Education headquarters team for their dedication and continued support for this important work. Their ongoing efforts and integrity are vital to the success and fairness of the Ministry of Education scholarship process. Lastly, I express deep appreciation to other public, private, and charitable scholarship providers who continue to demonstrate their commitment to investing in the future of our island's young people through generous funding for higher education and to other aspiring students. The choice to give consistently and as much as possible helps more and more students reach their potential. Everyone's collective contributions has made this celebration of academic excellence possible, and for that I am truly grateful. Madam President, once again, I congratulate this year's scholarship and award recipients. I wish them much success in their educational journeys. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Caesar. The second statement is in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, JP, the Junior Minister for Youth, Social Development, and Seniors, and she will provide an update on domestic abuse specialists. Senator Simmons, you have the floor.
Just gonna get the right statement. Sorry.
Right, good.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, today I rise to share important progress in our fight to end domestic abuse in Bermuda, a fight that affects not just individual families, but the heart of our community. Madam President, behind every statistic is a person, a woman terrified to speak out, man suffering in silence, a child caught in the middle. Domestic abuse does not discriminate. It impacts Bermudians of all backgrounds, ages, and genders. And for too long, too many suffer alone. Recognizing the growing urgency in the 2022 throne speech, this government committed to commissioning a full system review of Bermuda's response to domestic abuse. We contracted Safe Lives UK to examine our services, collect data, listen to survivors and frontline workers, and tell us honestly where we were falling short. Madam President, that review gave us a roadmap that shaped the foundation of Bermuda's first comprehensive 5-year domestic abuse strategy, launched in 2023. From this strategy came 10 priority action items, each focused on turning intent into action and words into safety. Today, I am proud to update this Honorable House on one of the most important of these actions, support from a domestic abuse specialist. Madam President, in April 2025, the ministry hired Bermuda's first certified domestic abuse liaison social worker, a specialist with over 4 years of hands-on experience supporting high-risk victims of abuse. This professional is a lifeline that will walk alongside survivors, our safety planning, emotional support, and access to services. And they will do so with compassion, expertise, and deep understanding. This officer is already working closely with the Department of Child and Family Services and the Center Against Abuse, as well as Bermuda Police Service, Sexual Assault Response Team, SART, and the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Committee known as MARAC. Madam President, for the benefit of the public and listening audience, MARAC is a collaborative safety planning team that brings together key agencies to identify, assess, and protect victims at the highest risk of serious harm. Every week, they meet to share information, develop coordinated responses, and take action together to keep victims safe and hold abusers accountable. Madam President, the new domestic abuse liaison social worker has already begun supporting victims who might otherwise have fallen through the cracks. Their work ensures survivors, women, and men don't have to navigate the system alone. This is just one piece of our broader plan. Work is already underway on implementing the full 5-year domestic abuse strategic plan. Consultants with internal stakeholders have started, and soon we will engage the wider community. Because to truly end domestic violence, we must all be a part of the solution. Madam President, we are committed to building a Bermuda where abuse is not hidden in the shadows, where survivors are supported, not shamed, and where every Bermudian can live free from fear. In closing, Madam President, I thank the dedicated members of MARAC Committee who meet every week and work tirelessly to action the key priorities of this strategy. Your efforts are helping to build a safer, fairer Bermuda. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. You have a second statement,
Yes.
the update on the Google subsea cable projects and Bermuda's role as a digital Atlantic hub. So you can present your statement.
Thank you. Madam President, in 2022, Bermuda took a bold and deliberate step to attract Google and its first cable, Nuvium, a transatlantic subsea cable linking South Carolina to Portugal via Bermuda. Such a bold step under the leadership of the former Deputy Premier and Minister of Home Affairs, the Honorable Walter Rabin, was taken with measured, intentional, and vision. This relationship materialized due to a firm policy approach grounded in long-term strategy, infrastructure readiness, and the belief that small jurisdictions can play a major role in shaping the global digital economy. Madam President, today I am pleased to build on that established relationship and confirm that Bermuda will again serve as a critical node in global digital connectivity. On July 9th, Google announced a second transatlantic cable named SOL, the Spanish word for sun. This new cable will connect Florida to Spain, transitioning through Bermuda and the Azores, and will serve as the only direct in-service fiber optic connection between Florida and Europe. Madam President, importantly, this second cable confirms that Bermuda is a deliberate choice based on our regulatory clarity, technical preparedness, and geographical relevance. Google further investment in our shores through the establishment of SIL signals that our jurisdiction is one of trust, regulatory certainty, and sound governance. Madam President, Seagrass Service Limited, Google's subsidiary in Bermuda, will pending final approval from the Department of Planning, construct a landing station at Southside St. David's, supported by our community. The land station will be capable of accommodating up to 4 subsea fiber optic cables, effectively positioning Bermuda as a permanent fixture in the global network routing architect. SIL will strengthen Bermuda's resilience. It will link to the new Nuvium system to provide unprecedented transatlantic redundancy. Madam President, what is clear to me is the fact that Bermuda is no longer speaking in hypotheticals and an aspirational manner regarding digital diversification. We have evidenced the fruits of our tangible and successful groundwork that has been laid with forward-leading policies, transparent processes, and interagency coordination. Google has made Bermuda a repeat partner and is supported by its standing as one of the world's most consequential technology firms. And Madam President, we should be equally clear that this is only the fruit of good governance, good policy, and good legislation. Madam President, Google's town hall held on June 17, 2025 in St. David is further proof that the company's commitment to our communities, their outreach efforts have been inclusive, informative, and well received. At the session, Google reaffirmed its intention to diversify Bermuda's legacy economy, support the development and training of local talent, and drive climate positive innovations in partnership with Bermuda. Madam President, this announcement comes at a time when the global economic environment is rapidly shifting, developing faster than transitional sectors. The government of Bermuda understands that securing relevance in that economy requires us to move beyond slogans and promises and demands that we redouble our efforts to facilitate physical infrastructure, establish credible regulations, and earn the trust of notable public institutions. Today, we celebrate the delivery of all three of these aims. Madam President, this is undoubtedly economic significance in this relationship. But more importantly, there is strategic advancements that must not be overlooked. Advancements in how and what Bermuda is known for. Through our relationship with Google, we also demonstrate a strategic evolution. Madam President, it is an evolution, an investment in our future, a future where Bermuda moves from being simply known for insurance or tourism, and it is entrenched in role and reputation in the digital economy. This economy, Madam President, that is the digital backbone that powers financial systems, health networks, AI services, digital finance, and international research. It is shaping how we interact in this world. It is shaping how data moves, how systems interconnect, and how innovation is delivered. This same cable that joins its sister cable will carry cloud traffic, provide expanded capacity for our local providers, and deliver AI models across the Atlantic. It will bring Bermuda along with it and will now also route through St. David's. Madam President, it is a tremendous accomplishment and an accomplishment that all Bermuda should be proud of. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. The final statement is the additional one we had this morning, and that is in the name of Senator the Honorable Kim Wilkerson, JP, Attorney General and Minister of Justice, and it is consultation launched on proposed amendments to the Proceeds of Crime Act. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, and good morning to the listening public. Madam President, I rise today to update this honorable chamber and the public on Bermuda's continued commitment to maintaining its status as a premier jurisdiction in the global fight against money laundering and terrorist financing. Madam President, in our last mutual evaluation in 2020 by the Financial Action Task Force, otherwise referred to as FATF, Bermuda was deemed to have robust systems in place to combat money laundering and terrorist financing activities. However, the FATF has since revised its standards, which has triggered a review of the legislation currently in place. As a result, Bermuda must once again review and, where necessary, amend our legislative framework to ensure we remain fully aligned with these updated global requirements. Madam President, this work is not just about regulatory compliance for compliance's sake. It is about protecting our financial system, our reputation, and our people. It is about ensuring that Bermuda remains a responsible player in the global financial ecosystem as we prepare for our fifth round mutual evaluation, which will begin in October 2026. Madam President, to that end, the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, referred to as NEMLAC, has launched a consultation on proposed amendments to Bermuda's primary anti-money laundering, anti-terrorism financing laws. That is, the Proceeds of Crime Act 1997, referred to as POCA, the Proceeds of Crime, Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorist Financing Supervision and Enforcement Act 2008, referred to in industry as POCA-C, and the Proceeds of Crime, Anti-Money Laundering, and Anti-Terrorist Financing Regulations of 2008. The amendments being circulated now while technical in nature, are critical to our compliance with the revised FATF standards. Madam President, the government is interested in soliciting industry and individual views, input, comments on the proposed amendments to address the requirements of the revised FATF standards at the country level. The purpose of the consultation paper is therefore to advise industry and the public of the proposed amendments and solicit comments from stakeholders on the proposed amendments for areas of potential impact and concern to them. Madam President, the key proposed legislative amendments due to changes in the FATF standards are as follows. 1. Proliferation financing risk assessment. It is proposed that Section 49(1) of POCA be amended to provide the legislative basis for a proliferation financing risk assessment. Madam President, this amendment addresses one of the new requirements of the revised FATF Recommendation 1, which requires competent authorities and supervisory authorities to coordinate activities to identify, assess, and understand Bermuda's proliferation financing risk, and to take commensurate action aimed at ensuring that these risks are mitigated effectively. This will impact institutional risk assessments and other supervisory measures. 2. NAMLAC statutory members. It is proposed that Section 49(2) of the POCA be amended to reflect the inclusion of the permanent secretary of the Ministry of National Security as a statutory member of NAMLAC, as well as the chair of the AML-ATF, Barristers and Accountants Board. Madam President, these amendments are in keeping with the ministry having been appointed a NAMLAC agency by the Ministry of Finance pursuant to the provision of the Proceeds of Crime Act on July 2, 2024. The third proposed change, Madam President, is the designation of the Attorney General's chambers as an enforcement authority. It is proposed that the Minister of Justice of the Attorney General's chambers be delegated or designated as enforcement authority for the recovery of property obtained through unlawful conduct pursuant to Section 36F of POCA. Madam President, this amendment would aim to augment the available investigative tools in civil recovery matters. Fourth is the requirement for publication of cancellation notices. It is proposed that Section 20 of the POCA-C be amended to include provisions requiring the publication in the Gazette of a notice of every cancellation of a registration of a non-licensed anti-money laundering, anti-terrorist financing regulated financial institution or regulated non-financial business or profession. Madam President, this amendment is aimed at ensuring consistency with the requirement in respect of licensed financial institutions. The fifth proposed amendment, the civil penalties. It is proposed that Section 23 of the SIA Act be amended to grant competent authorities the power to impose civil penalties for all breaches of POCA regulations. The amendments proposed would explicitly include Regulations 10, all of Regulation 11, 17A, and 18A, which are currently omitted from the list, as well as adding a catch-all provision at the end to future-proof future additional regulations over time. Madam President, this amendment is aimed at ensuring civil penalties can be imposed for all breaches. 6, consequential amendment. It is proposed that there be a consequential amendment to Section 42A of the POCA to reflect the legislative change in 2019 that removed the licensing regime for fund administration business from the Investment Funds Act 2026 to the Fund Administration Provider Business Act 2019. Madam President, this amendment is aimed at ensuring that the POCA addresses the current legislation in place in respect of fund administration. Amendment 7, the resolution of conflicting provisions in POCA C. It is proposed that Section 22 of POCA C be amended to resolve conflicting provisions with Sections 23 and 24 of POCA C with respect to the time periods for the issuance of a decision notice in relation to a proposed civil penalty. Proposed Amendment 8, the designation of financial group. It is proposed that Section 42B of the POCA be amended to enable all statutory authorities to advise the Minister of Justice on the designation of financial groups. Madam President, this amendment is aimed at ensuring compliance with the revised FATF standards, which include all groups subject to supervision in the definition of financial groups. Proposed Amendment 9, additional duties of supervisory authorities. It is proposed that Section 5 of the POCA C be amended to include in the Section 5 duties of supervisory authorities, provisions enabling them to issue rules, codes of conduct, or statements of principles as regards compliance with the AML, ATF regulations, and other relevant legislation and best practice. Madam President, this amendment is aimed at enhancing the powers of supervisory authorities. Proposed Amendment 10 relates to correspondent banking. It is proposed that Section 13 of POCA be amended to reflect that a correspondent relationship should be seen as broader than a bank-to-bank relationship. A correspondent relationship may be offered by any regulated financial institution to a client who may be a bank or other financial institution, such as a DAB. Madam President, this amendment addresses one of the revisions to FATF Recommendation 15, obligations which previously related only to correspondent banking now apply to all correspondent relationships in order to capture the virtual asset service providers. Finally, proposed Amendment 11 relates to suspicious activity reporting obligations on non-professional trustees. It is proposed that Section 46 of POCA be amended to ensure that the obligations with respect to suspicious activity reporting clearly extend to non-professional trustees. This would be captured by adding an activity to describe the discharge of those trustee obligations. Madam President, this amendment would address one of the requirements of the revised FATF standards, and in particular, Recommendation 25, which addresses beneficial ownership and transparency of legal arrangements. Madam President, these 11 proposed changes, are not cosmetic changes. They are substantive reforms intended to keep Bermuda's AML, ATF framework in lockstep with the evolving global expectations and best practices. As such, we are inviting written submissions on the proposed amendments from stakeholders and the wider public. I should say that the consultation went out last week, and the deadline for comments is July 30th, 2025. Submissions may be sent to info-nemlec@gov.bm. Madam President, consultation is a cornerstone of good governance. It is a demonstration that this government does not legislate in isolation, but in partnership with industry, regulators, and the people of Bermuda. We must act with foresight, with diligence, and with unity of purpose. The integrity of our financial system, and more importantly, our standing in the international community, depends on it. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Minister Wilkinson, Minister of Justice, Attorney General, and Government Leader in the Senate. Moving on with our orders of the day, item number 9, introduction of bills. There are none. Item number 10, the first reading of public bills. The following public bills have been received from the Honorable House of Assembly and are now read for the first time. The titles are respectively Land Evaluation and Tax Special Provisions and Postponement of Preparation of Draft Valuation List Act 2025, the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025, and the third one is the Building Amendment Act 2025. Item number 11, the first reading of private bills. There are none. Item number 12, question period. Senators, we will now entertain questions on the statements that were delivered this morning. The first one being delivered by Senator the Honorable Crystal Caesar, the Minister of Education, and that was the 2025 Scholarship and Awards recipient. Would any senator care to ask questions on this statement? Yes. Senator Marcus Jones, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to my fellow colleagues here in the Senate chambers, and good morning to the listening audience. First of all, I'd like to thank the Minister of Education for giving us that statement in regards to the scholarship winners. Thanks to her ministry staff for those that administered this scholarship awards. And special mention, I believe she made, was to Shanae Smith, who was the Scholarship and Awards Program Manager. It must be a lot of work to do, to organize, to compile, to vet all the persons that had applied. So hats off to her and her team for doing a fabulous job. I do have a few questions. My first question would be, what portion of this year's scholarship recipients are pursuing studies in priority areas identified in Bermuda's workforce development strategy, i.e. education, healthcare, and technology? That would like to see what the minister has to say about that. And based on what she gives us, my question will be, my supplementary question will be, is the ministry tracking the alignment between scholarship awards and Bermuda's future skills and labor market needs? I think there is there's some importance to making sure that we are aligned with what the market is asking, that we are providing actually the scholarships that target those specific skill sets that are needed in today's and the future workforce market here in Bermuda. Another primary question I'd like to ask is, has the ministry undertaken any recent evaluation of the long-term outcomes of government scholarship recipients? In other words, of those that have been fortunate to benefit from the scholarships, are we tracking the graduation rates and their subsequent employment paths once they have finished school? I think that'll be a valuable data, so we can see how the monies that have been invested, which we are all in agreement with, I believe it was $1.7 million. I think it's money well spent. I think it's important that we track and see how our young people are benefiting ultimately in receiving these scholarships.
You've asked one question and a supplementary in your second question.
Correct, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess my last question would be in as it revolves around retention. What percentage of past scholarship recipients from the last 5 years have returned to Bermuda after completing their studies? We know that there is a requirement in some of these scholarships, and some there isn't the strict, rigid requirement to return to Bermuda. But I think for the interest of the public, it will be good to know how many actually come back and actually give back to the country based on the benefits they receive from their scholarships. believe that's it for now. Thank you. Madam
Thank
President.
you. Would any other senator? Yes, Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam President, and good morning to our listening public. I'd like to congratulate Minister Caesar and her colleagues in education on the $1.7 million in scholarship award money that was giving out, and to send my best wishes to those awardees. I do have a couple of questions, and they really pertain to the support and giving back once somebody receives a scholarship. So the first question that I have is, with the scholarship recipients, what percentage of those scholarship recipients, or how many, have opportunities for employment in the Bermuda government, whether that is temporary for the summer or have been identified as being able to fill in a slot in the civil service? That's my first one.
Mhm.
And my second one is there any mentorship requirement of the scholarship awardees? So once a scholarship awardee receives a scholarship, do we require them to do any type of mentorship for persons who may be interested in receiving scholarships? Do we require them to do any reach out, to any coaching? What is the requirement? So we are giving them something. And even if it may not be service in the civil service or working in Bermuda, do we require any type of mentorship from those individuals to other students who may be interested in the areas in which they are interested in?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Mine is more of a statement than a question. I just want to highlight and thank the Ministry of Education as somebody that sits on the scholarship board. I just want to thank this government for year after year investing in our students. Year after year, we're raising the bar and investing more money into our students. And honestly, it's the highlight of my year as a senator, to actually sit in one and listen to these stories. And most of the names that Minister Caesar has spoken on today, I actually helped to interview. It is rewarding. The minister has been diligent to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and Ms. Shanae Smith as well. I just want to thank them for continually to put into our students, and thank you for realizing that our greatest asset is educating our students. So thank you, Minister Caesar.
And thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons, for your comment. While we wait response from the minister,
I'm
have the
prepared
floor.
to answer, Madam President. I must say that I'm a little surprised that there are questions, because this statement was more of a celebration of our young people and their achievements and those that have been awarded. And whilst I believe that my colleagues' questions are valid and very much require answering, I think that they are better placed as parliamentary questions, because they do not actually speak specifically to my statement. My statement was congratulating those individual students and outlining what the awards are. So I'd like to park that where it is, or those questions where they are, and ask them that if they would so graciously pose those questions, either written or oral, so that we can answer them at a time and a place which is more appropriate. I'd like to just focus at this time on the statement, which does celebrate these young people and their academic achievements. And so that is my answer to all questions, because at this time, those questions do not actually speak to the statement. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Minister. Senator.
I
Jones?
appreciate what the Minister of Education has answered us. And yes, we are joining hands with the government in celebrating our young people. And if she feels that written parliamentary questions are far more appropriate, as long as we get an assurance and a commitment that we're going to get those answers in due course, we can surely park it here, and we will submit those questions to her formally at a later date. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones. And also the questions that were put by Senator Tuala Tenek, are you asking for that as well?
The same, Madam President. Questions, as my understanding of the rules, are that they are supposed to be specific to
Related
the
to the
statement that was written.
Mhm.
And so if there are questions that arise out of that statement which don't relate specifically to it and they would like that answered, we can actually have a meeting, or they can pose them through parliamentary questions. Thank you.
Senator Tenek?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I can make my question specific to the statement. Of the individuals that you mentioned, how many are required to provide mentorship to students who are interested in pursuing the
Respectfully,
scholarship
Madam
award
President,
that they have received?
I again indicate that that is not what the statement speaks to. It doesn't speak to mentorships. It doesn't speak to requirements. It just speaks to celebrating those young people who have been awarded. And again, if the senator would like those questions answered, I'm happy to do so. But let's celebrate our young people and leave it at that today.
Senator Tenek, are you prepared to submit your question later?
Yes, I can do so, but I really have to take issue with the minister's inference that any question of her statement is not celebrating these students. This has nothing to do with celebrating the students. As a former teacher, educator myself, having sat on many scholarship boards as deputy director of ABIC, who have awarded $800,000 in scholarships and do require mentorship of our students, it was as a matter of celebration, but also interest in paying it forward and giving back so that we could continue to celebrate. So if every question will be deflected and said that we're not celebrating our students, I do have to take some issue with that, because that is certainly not the intent. I think nobody outside of nobody outside of education will ever take issue, and certainly no former educator will ever take issue with our students being celebrated. So that was indeed not the intent at all. And I will submit my questions written. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tenek. With that said, then you have a final
Yes,
comment?
I'm fine, and I was not trying to impugn any improper motives, but just indicating that again, as per the rules of the Senate, questions are based on that statement, and so I'm happy to answer those questions, to have that those discussions with regard to what we are trying to do to celebrate our young people. But this particular statement was just talking about those young people who are being celebrated and who have been awarded, and so I'm happy to do so, as I indicated earlier.
Thank you, Minister. Senators, with that said, we'll now move on to the second ministerial statement. Oh, she stepped out. The second statement that was given by Senator Lindsey Simmons on the domestic abuse specialist. Would any senator care to ask questions on the statement? Senator Tenek, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. So this may fall afoul, but it is not a question. It is just really to say how delighted and pleased I am to see this initiative come forward and to receive this report. And while I am interested in getting a number on the amount of people that have been serviced, that really is not the focus. I just wanted to, as I've mentioned in this house, it's an issue that is very important to me, and just congratulate the government in pushing this issue forward and having this person now in place. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tenek. Would any other senator care to speak on the statement? Yes, Senator Jones, you have the floor.
Thanks again, Madam President. Thank you to the Junior Minister for giving us this update on this domestic abuse specialist. I thought it was very informative. I do have one or two questions. In regards to transparency and evaluation, can the Junior Minister share what indicators are being used to assess the early impact of the domestic abuse liaison social worker role, and whether statistics or case outcomes will be made available in the upcoming plan? My second question has to do with sustainable resourcing. Can the Junior Minister confirm whether funding is in place to expand the number of domestic abuse specialists, and how the government plans to ensure the long-term sustainability of this role? And finally, my last question has to do with survivor support infrastructure. Will the strategic plan address broader systemic needs such as shelter space, transitional housing, legal support, and trauma counseling to support survivors beyond crisis intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to ask questions? Senator Tannock.
Yes, actually, Senator Jones's question prompted a supplementary question from me, and it was, I know that Senator Jones spoke of support to survivors, but I did want to ask, does the domestic violence officer only work with the victims, or do they also work with the alleged perpetrators to help them to secure counseling and any other services that may be required?
Thank you, Senator Tannock. We'll give Senator Simmons time to. Minister Wilkinson, you wanted to?
Yes, Madam President.
Sorry.
I will assist my colleague
Yes.
with those answers and say that while the Ministry of Social and Seniors is driving the holistic support system from the resource and treatment side, colleagues would know that the Ministry of Justice is at the same time working in tandem to deliver services in relation to the domestic violence court program. So these initiatives work in lockstep to try to answer, I think, the questions from both colleagues. So I believe the first question is, what will there be what will be the measurement around the activities of the IDVA? So we have she is currently my understanding is working between the ministry social closely connected with the BPS, and actually sitting part of the time at the Center Against Abuse, so that there is a connected up approach. So there's clearly an intention for these efforts to be data driven. It is critical that we understand the depth of the problem. We certainly have statistics from the Center Against Abuse of Women's Resource Center and the police. The BPS also has its domestic violence liaison officer in place. And so whereas I'm going to go ahead in what I anticipate could be questions, where the statement talked about MARAC, which is the multi-agency committee, that group work more to support all of the attendant services around an individual case. And what is being driven from the Ministry of Justice is the domestic violence working task force, which is helping to drive the policy perspectives around this. So that is why we are tasked with bringing into force and supporting the domestic violence court program. But in these, we have every necessary agency and department at the table, which you recognize is important. And the work we can't inform, as you quite rightly said, how will we determine if we need to budget for this person to be in place next year unless we understand the data around what they're doing and the effectiveness of it? And I believe that that's your question. So she's only started, but so those will be measurements. And I believe that we can undertake cross-ministry to bring back to the respective houses a midpoint on how we're measuring that progress, because we know that this is something that is important to everyone in Bermuda.
Thank you.
I
Mr.
hope I
Wilkinson. think-
captured, the essence of
Senator,
the
so
questions.
yeah. I think as the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, I think it was
I can feel
beneficial
I can
that we
feel
were
a
able to-
supplemental coming on.
Well, if I can say this, I do appreciate the AG's answer because
Mhm.
it gave a sort of 30,000 foot answer to the whole, how the whole, all the pieces fit together. I think that's important. But I think I had some specific questions that I would like for the junior minister to target. Although the answer the AG gave us helped us into seeing the whole picture as opposed to the piecemeal answers.
Madam President,
Simmons, yes.
I do believe that the AG answered these questions sufficely.
Senator Jones.
Yeah, I'm looking through the questions that I asked, and I specifically wanted the junior minister to speak on the specific issues of transitional housing, trauma counseling, the whole 9 yards. If she could be a little bit more, she can expand on those questions so we can get a better sense of how this is all going to work.
I will
Minister
answer, and
Wilkerson, yeah.
I have apologies, Senator Jones, because I didn't specifically answer the question that you asked. I thought it would be understood that when I said that MARAC comes together to bring all of the services, I should say that includes housing. So there's collaboration with home, for example. There's a clear understanding that when someone is a victim of domestic abuse, they may need to escape. So we are assessing how are we assisting with that. Currently, there is a roadblock, and we're looking at the challenges in how someone who might be a victim accesses financial assistance. And there's a process, and there's recognition now that that process may take too long when you're in an emergency. So financial assistance is at the table as well, so that we iron out how we can line up these services so that they work together. So I believe your specific question was, are all of those services are being considered in the offering when there is assistance to an individual? And I think what I was saying is, yes, that is what MARAC is doing, but also at the policy level, we're at the 10,000, we're saying these systems aren't working. So, you have one victim over here and they may be coming together to find them housing, but then there's recognition that, we need several safe houses, but it has to be data driven. And so that's how I think the individual services for in case management, which I think is what you're referring to, case management, right? What the case management services look like as opposed to the policy. I understand. And additionally, you've asked the question about perpetrator services. I believe that Minister Furbert gave a statement in another place in relation to the retention of providers for perpetrator services. So my understanding, and you don't want to speak in front of her, they may not be finalized yet, but it's clear understanding that perpetrator services are absolutely necessary, because in case management, we must try to assist the family as a whole. And that clearly means that there won't be a change in behavior unless we can deliver case management to the perpetrator as well.
Yes,
Madam, I
Senator Jones.
thank you for that answer. First, let me give kudos for it was Senator Tannock that actually asked the question about the perpetrators. But the additional question I asked is in regards to the budget, as far as the funding that's going to be set to take care of the shall we say the added cost of taking care of those that are victims beyond just the initial counseling, the the initial alignment of all the agencies that work on their behalf, we realize that this is just not a one-time experience. It's going to go on possibly for a year, 2 years, to make sure that this person comes out of it and is back in society and is completely taken care of.
If I might, the question is slightly confusing because you're referring to budgets and then you're referring to an individual. And I think the point that I was trying to make was that data, from what we ascertain now in a data-driven approach, informs how we plan budgetary going forward. So if your question is, have we crystal balled exactly what it's going to cost and have we budgeted for it already? I can't answer that from where I sit in relation to the Ministry of Social Development. But if that is something that we can also put as a parliamentary question, that's fine. We can get those answers. It certainly was not something that would have been contemplated in the statement.
I'm not going to prolong this, but I'm just trying to check funding with services. And I just was using that one person as an example. You can't just take the one example and sort of put a funding to that one person, but I'm saying the whole process. And I guess a further question, I'll have to send it in a parliamentary question so I can flush out what I'm trying to get to. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Jones.
Thank you, Madam President. That would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. With that said, there's no further comments or questions on this statement. We will move on then to the third statement, and that is also in the name of Senator Lindsay Simmons, the Junior Minister for Home Affairs, Youth, Social Development, and Seniors, and National Security. And that has to do with Google subsea cable projects with any senator. Yes, Senator John White, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple of questions for the Junior Minister. One is, all of us have, laptop or an iPad or a phone or more than one of those. And so I'm just wondering, with this new cable, will the average Bermudian, will there be anything different in terms of speed of service, or will there be any effect or impact on any person in Bermuda as a result of this new cable? My first question. And the second one is, this is obviously very good news when a company such as Google, which has such a high profile, a terrific reputation, selects Bermuda. But I'm just trying to understand, in the statement, this sort of reference to diversifying Bermuda's legacy economy, which has been built up over decades of success of insurance and reinsurance and tourism. And so I'm trying to, it seems like a bit of a leap to me to consider this this cable connecting Bermuda to then the Azores and Portugal being a potential diversification in that context. So if I can just get the Junior Minister to perhaps clarify, what the sort of material benefits would be to classify this as being a diversification of our economy that's been, as I say, built up, with insurance and reinsurance and tourism. So those are my two questions. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator John White. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Yes, Senator Foley, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Madam President, and thank you and good morning to all. I do want to thank the Junior Minister Simmons for her statement regarding the Google Nuven subsea cable project. And being from St. David's, I'm happy to see this project moving forward. I do have a couple of questions. One regarding local talent development and benefits. More specifically, Madam President, has the ministry signed any agreements at this point with the Google Nuven subsea cable project? Now, I must preface that to say, I was happy to hear that there will be, I think, training and career opportunities made available to Bermudians through the SOUL project. But my question is, has the ministry signed any agreements with Google or the Nuven subsea cable project to ensure that local hiring or investment in education, such as in scholarships, certification programs, in fiber optics, or networking engineering, been considered, or has any signed agreements on that been accomplished? That's my first question.
Mhm.
And if I can move along to my second question regarding regulatory infrastructure oversight. Madam President, what is for the junior minister, what is the current status of planning approval for the landing station in St. David's? I know that it's going through its process, but if we can get an indication of when construction is expected to begin, that will be good to know as well. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Foley. Senator Simmons, when you're ready, you can respond to the questions. I don't see other questions being raised at this time. Mhm.
Madam
Oh,
President,
I beg your pardon, Senator Foley, you have additional questions?
I do have one question, one additional question. What
That's your
revenue
third
does
one.
Bermuda anticipate earning, either directly or indirectly, from hosting these cables? Thank you, Madam President.
Earnings. Those are your three questions.
Yes, thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Madam President, question 1. Google will not be selling to the public or have any retail presence in Bermuda. Google has stated it will wholesale capacity to local providers like Digicel, OneCom, Eastlink, Paradise, etc., who can then pass on any potential savings to customers. It will take time for these wholesale arrangements to bed in. Redundancy of local infrastructures will be improved as our existing submarine cable serving Bermuda are aging and are approaching the end of their technical lifespan. Number 2, Madam President, question number 2. Bermuda is expanding its reputation on the global stage, particularly in the digital economy. We are expanding from just being known for reinsurance and tourism to also being known on the global stage as a digital leader. Madam President, the benefits Bermuda. What will Google do for the community? The June town hall made clear Google community incentives span 3 periods, currently in process in the development for 2025-2026 and a planned for 2026-2027, which are likely to be placed based on programs. Just give me a second, Madam President.
Mhm.
Has the ministry signed any agreements with Google in regards to job and education? At this time, we have no signed agreements. Google is working. Google is working with College for Grow with Google scholarships. When will construction of the cable landing station start? For Nubium, a third of the cable has already been laid in the Atlantic, and once planning permission has been received, construction of the cable landing station will commence. The cable landing station will be built for up to 4 cables and will also house the recently announced sail cable and any other further cables. The facility will be 35,000 square feet and around 50,000 if you include the auxiliary area. Google stated that the facility needs to be built in 2026 so that Nubium can be ready for service, i.e., lit up, in 2027. Planning permission has already been received for the relocation of the Nitro Remote Control Car Racetrack Association and construction of a new track which will begin this year. This is on the critical path. Madam President, I think they just have one more.
Mhm.
1 second. What revenue is generated? There will be an annual tax and a regulatory fee. We didn't have the quantum. They are specified by the RE. I believe I answered all the questions, Madam President.
Senators,
Yes, thank you, Madam President.
Senator Tannock.
Thank you, Madam President. My questions are really from an environmental perspective, or maybe even an insurance perspective. I wanted to know if and what consideration has been given in the event that the cables are torn or ripped by vessels. In any way, shape, or form, who are we expecting to cover that? Are we expecting our fishing vessels, our tankers? Are we expecting our vessels to have insurance that would cover the destruction or ripping or any type of damage to the subsea cables? So, because I would assume that that those cables are very expensive to put down, and I don't know what we have explained to our seagoing population as to what their responsibility may be with regard to the vessels. I don't, and so that the first is with regard to really the expectation with regard to vessel with cable damage by vessels, and what has been communicated with regard to that in terms of any insurance necessary to cover that? Or is that something that Google has said that they themselves will be willing to cover, understanding that in our environment locally, our vessels probably don't have the capacity to cover that? That's the first thing. And the second is with regard to the subsea cables in general. hurricane damage with hurricanes, any type of damage. What is the requirement of Google to replace damaged cables and to pull up the cables once they have been once they are no longer of service? Do we have a requirement with Google for the removal of those cables? And what time frame have we asked Google to fix any damaged cables? And then my final question is with regard to how this impacts any type of our undersea environment. So has a study been done on the impact of fish in the area and our sea life in the area where these cables are laid? And are any mitigation efforts in place as a result of those studies? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Tannock.
Madam President, I do want to say Google pays for this repair. It would also carry an insurance. Will carry insurance. There are penalties and fines per Submarine Communication Act 2020. Those who break cables. The environmental impact on breaks. A submarine cable has a technical life of around 25, sometimes 30 years. On average, cable faults occur once or twice during the technical life. The fault break could be a cable or equipment issue or a cut cable. The use of submarine cables with multiple landing sites and restrictions on activities in these zones greatly reduce the incidence of cable cuts. Best practice is cables are not pulled up at the end of life as they form part of the seafloor. I believe I answered the questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Simmons.
Thank you.
I do have one more answer coming in.
You can present that, Senator Simmons.
The cable is very low, and once laid, marine growth forms over the cable and it becomes part of the marine environment. An environmental impact study is being done for the marine elements and landing at Ennis Bay. Google is working with the planning department on the proposed construction building elements to ensure compliance with regulation for noise, light, and air quality. The EIA study done as part of the marine study, submarine cables are very benign. Key marine impact is not a lay during whale migration. It's not to lay, sorry, during whale migration. Thank you, Madam President. I believe that answers all the questions.
Thank you, Senator Simmons, and thank you all senators who asked questions on that statement. We'll now deal with the final statement, and that was the additional one, the proceeds of crime, the POCA, which was given by the Honorable Kim Wilkinson, Attorney General and Minister of Justice. Would any senator? Yes, Senator John White, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It's obviously very critical to our jurisdiction that Bermuda retain the strong standing from FATF that we have from our last assessment. And I heard the minister say that there will be industry feedback, which is also very positive. I'm trying to understand whether these 10 or 11 amendments, whether they are required for Bermuda to retain our strong standing with FATF, or if there is pushback from industry on one or more of them, what the position would be of government, vis-a-vis the pushback, because obviously our top priority is to retain the current and strong FATF standing. So that's my question. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator White. Are there any other questions then, Senator?
Thank you, Madam President. Let me first preface my questions by saying that in order for us in this chamber to be able to give intelligent, well thought out questions, it is helpful if a statement is added, that we can actually get a printout so we can cover and see what was written. It's sort of difficult to be listening and then making sure that we're not using the same questions again. So I would encourage the government side, if they can please help us in that area so that we can, so everyone can be edified by this question and answer period. My first question would be, I heard that one of the amendments that the AG was mentioning was that
It's on SharePoint, yeah. Senators, you're aware that the statement was on SharePoint.
This morning, or when did we get it? The last statement on the.
Yes, the statement that was, my understanding is that.
Proceeds of crime? It was on SharePoint? What time did we get it? I looked for it, I couldn't see it.
My understanding it was that it was on SharePoint once it was agreed that we would have the statement. So you're saying that it was not on SharePoint?
No, I'm saying, did we get it before 10 o'clock or did we get it after 10 o'clock? Had the proceedings already started? I mean, we got it. Okay, we'll move on. Point made. The AG was mentioning about the amendment that's going to be considered would be to bring in the AG's chamber as the agency on record that will actually be enforcing some of the, I believe it was the enforcement of counteracting properties that's been obtained through unlawful means. My question would be, what was the government agency that was tasked to enforce that prior to the AG's chambers? I don't think that was in her statement. And was it changed due to ineffectiveness or as a means of aligning the task that was required? I know that government does that from time to time to make sure that everyone's on the same page. If she could bring some light to that for us. And also the proceeds of crime, which I think was 1997 that it was enacted. I know that the original intent was the funds that were received through through crime penalties was originally intended to fund the regulatory and money laundering regime in the country. Is that still the case? And are these proceeds tracked and identified for dispersions? That's it, Madam President. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Jones. Would any other senator care to ask questions on this statement? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. It's purely administrative. Can we be directed exactly to the location of that document?
It's on the SharePoint. I was told that this was a statement that was requested to be presented today, and I did inquire as to whether or not the statement was on SharePoint, and I was advised that it was. So I'm just talking to the clerk now to find out, but it would have been on SharePoint.
Thank you.
Sorry. Senator Fabler.
Sorry, Madam President. Yes, just for the edification of the listening audience as well, parliament.pm, Senate business. These statements can be found under the ministerial statements heading. they just have the date. I don't know what time to the previous question, but the statement around POCA is available there as a PDF.
Thank you for that. Mhm. So, Senators, are there any other questions on this statement? I'm trying to find out if they have access to it now. Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, there's.
okay. Thank you.
Do you have any specific
Just-
question to myself?
Right. Okay. Thank you, Madam President. I'll try to answer the questions. I'm going to start. Senator White asked the first question, but I think just, as a matter of housekeeping, I will start with Senator Jones's question. And I beg the apologies of colleagues. It was intended that the statement would have been submitted earlier and you would have seen it on the site. Well, actually, it wouldn't get on SharePoint until now, as ministerial statements are, because they can't be in advance of the in advance of the Senate hearing. However, even in reviewing the statement and contemplating it, I realized it is quite a technical statement, and it would have been appropriate, and I accept that, to have issued copies so that colleagues could at least have had the ability to read along. But I would say that it's already been launched, so all of the points that I've made are in the consultation. That's on the government forum already, so you could see it there. But I think that Senator Jones's point is a different one. He's saying in this forum, it would have been efficient to be able, if there wasn't an advanced side of it, to be able to see it, to read along. And I accept that, Senator Jones.
Have a hard copy.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So starting back, but we accept that it is there now. And as I said, the paper went out for consultation last week, so you could see it on the government forum in any event. But you would not have known to look there because you didn't know that I was bringing it today because it on the order paper. So I completely understand. Thank you. So Senator White's question was whether or not the 11 proposed changes are required or not. They are the recommendations from CFATF in the reviews as to what we should be doing. So I think the consultation goes more to how. I think we have the sense that they should not be controversial because all of the related agencies have been meeting. They are aware of what the new requirements are, so there should be some expectation. But they have been waiting on chambers to propose drafts and to itemize this. So, in an ideal world, the consultation it would have happened earlier, but it is out there for industry. So, ideally, we'd like to have it that way, but there may be some feedback that says, a particular proposal may impact something that hadn't been considered. And so that is the point of the consultation, that we go back to the table and consider those things. So I think your question might, in another way, say, is it baked? Not exactly. Not exactly. And I think the consultation is important because the range of stakeholders is quite broad, and they are obviously the parties impacted in the particular industries, and particularly as we're adding in the digital asset businesses now, which were not in scope before. So I think getting their feedback will be important in how we go forward. The question from Senator Jones is that one of the key proposals here is to designate the AG's chambers as the enforcement authority and who was doing it before. It was being done by the AG's chambers before, but it wasn't pursuant to a specific piece of legislation that we could point to when we're being assessed that would say this is the authority by which we are doing it. So it is making very clear the regime as in terms of which organization has the authority to carry out the enforcement actions. The second question was in relation to the actual proceeds of crime and whether the proceeds are tracked for dispersion. Yes, the proceeds are tracked for dispersion. And currently, the regime is set up where the funds do help to support the administration of the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee, its expenses, as well as the attendant expenses of related ministries when they have had to staff up, train, or take on specific resources who are trained in compliance, anti-money laundering, terrorism financing, or proliferation, for that matter. That those funds are there. Another part of the funds are designated for charitable purposes, and historically, it would have been charities where their mandate may be, for example, drug prevention and education, but there is a recognition that sports is often an antidote to antisocial behavior, and so there has been applications granted to sporting organizations as well, and particularly those that deal with youth programs.
Supplemental, Madam President?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that, Madam AG. My question would be, would there have had to have been an amendment on that original proceeds of crime legislation to allow for these funds to be diverted from the strictly anti-money laundering regime to all these associated agencies? I see the reasoning behind it, but wouldn't there have to be an amendment to actually change the wording to diversify that money, those monies?
No, the act contemplates that. It's contemplated at the moment. But what we would have the ability to do while that's contemplated in the act is to decide whether there's a national focus that might guide the charitable giving. I think that's so that would be subject to guidelines. It's not in the act, yeah. And those could change from time to time,
depending on the minister's guidance. Is that what I'm to interpret that as?
I think not so much the minister's guidance, but I think on national priorities.
Mm-hmm. So, Senators, those were all the questions that were presented. Thank you. That completes our question period. We will now move on to our agenda, which is the orders of the day. And senators, I did read out the public bills that were sent from the House earlier, and those are the ones that we will undertake at this time. The first being the Land Evaluation and Tax Special Provisions and Postponement or Preparation Draft Evaluation Act. And this is the second reading, and that is in the name of Senator Honorable Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance.
Yes, thank you. Madam President, if I could, I'd like to move that provisions of Standing Order 25 be granted so that the Senate may now proceed with the second reading of the bills mentioned earlier today.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I now move that the bill entitled the Land Valuation and Tax Postponement of Preparation of Draft Valuation List Amendment Act 2025 be now read a second time.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I am pleased to introduce for the second reading the approval of this House, the bill entitled the Land Valuation and Tax Postponement of Preparation of Draft Valuation List Amendment Act 2025. Madam President, the main purpose of this bill is to postpone the date by which the quinquennial draft valuation list next due to be prepared under the Land Valuation Act 1967 or the Act, and to extend the validity period of the current valuation list. Madam President, honorable members will be aware that the valuation list sets out the annual rental values or ARVs for properties in Bermuda. The 2015 valuation list is the current list enforced, as the 2020 quinquennial revaluation of properties was postponed in order to help reduce uncertainty for taxpayers affected by the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. Pursuant to the provisions of the Act, the next quinquennial draft valuation list is due to be deposited on the 31st of December 2025. Madam President, the bill extends the date of the preparation for the next quinquennial revaluation by 1 year and confirms that the continuation of the 2015 valuation list as the valuation list for Bermuda until the 31st of December 2026. Consequently, the next draft valuation list will go on deposit on the 31st of December 2026 and will come into effect for land tax purposes on the 1st of January 2027. Madam President, the Land Valuation Department's efforts in updating and maintaining the valuation lists are crucial to Bermuda's land tax system. The tax commissioner anticipates raising over $87 million in land tax revenue, which accounts for 6.1% of the government's projected revenue for the fiscal year 2025-26, based on the ARVs in the current 2015 valuation list. Madam President, the quinquennial revaluation involves valuing all properties on the island, and honorable members will appreciate that this is a considerable and significant undertaking for the department, which comprises only 8 members of staff. The objective of the quinquennial revaluation is to reflect changes in property rental values at a specific point in time. This mass appraisal ensures that all properties are valued on the same basis and date, promoting equity and fairness in assessments and consequently in land tax liabilities for Bermuda's residents. Madam President, a key component of the revaluation process involves collecting data on approximately 37,000 valuation units. Historically, this has been done by printing and mailing out hard copy notices and forms. The data received back is manually entered into the department's IT system, a process that takes around 6 months, and it requires hiring temporary tax data inputters in addition to paying overtime to the department staff. The 6 months spent on transcribing information from hard copies could be better utilized analyzing the rental data and valuation model building. Madam President, given the importance of the valuation list, it is essential to modernize the Act governing the quinquennial revaluation and the much needed transition to online forms. This modernization will enable the department to operate efficiently in today's digital age and eliminate outdated legislative provisions that are no longer suitable for the modern world, such as the printing and mailing of hard copy notices and forms to each taxpayer, and upon production of the draft valuation list, depositing a printed copy of the hard copy list at every post office on the island. Madam President, the 1 year postponement of preparation of the next quinquennial draft valuation list will ensure a smooth transition of digital forms and completion of necessary legislative changes to the Act. These changes directly impact the next and all future quinquennial revaluations as they support long term digital transformation and remove antiquated procedures which have no place in the 21st century digital age. Madam President, it should be noted that there are no adverse financial effects arising from the 1 year postponement of the preparation of the next draft valuation list. In addition to enabling operational readiness for the transition to electronic submission of notices and online forms, property owners maintain certainty in land tax liabilities as there will not be holistic changes to 37,000 ARVs due to a revaluation this year. Additionally, residential property owners will benefit from a 50% reduction in the base land tax rate commencing January 2026. This measure is to provide relief to all homeowners and aligns with government's commitment to building a Bermuda that benefits everyone and easing the cost of living. Furthermore,
thanks.
ARV thresholds for pensioner exemptions, rent control, and sales of properties to restricted persons will not need to be adjusted because of a draft 2025 valuation list and across the board changes to ARVs. Madam President, with the continuation of the 2015 valuation list for an additional year, the existing list will continue to be updated as normal for property changes, such as new builds, demolitions, splits, mergers, etc. Honorable members should also note that property owners will continue to have the right to request a reassessment of their property if there have been any physical alterations, including the right to object to any proposed ARV amendments made by the department to the 2015 list, as they do now. Madam President, postponing the preparation of the next draft valuation list not only ensures uncertainty in land tax liabilities for property owners and stable revenue from land tax for the government, but also safeguards a smooth transition to digital forms and the completion of necessary imminent legislative changes to the Act. As previously mentioned, these changes will significantly influence the upcoming and all future quinquennial revaluations by advancing long-term digital transformation and eliminating outdated practices that no longer belong in the digital era. Madam President, with those introductory remarks, I will now move that the bill entitled the Land Valuation Tax and Special Provisions and Postponement of the Preparation of Draft Valuation List Act 2025 is now read for a second time. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Honorable Crystal Caesar, spokesperson for finance. Would any senator care to speak on this bill?
Yes, Madam President. I will say before I do make my remarks, I was quite intrigued with this word quinquennial. I'd never encountered that word before. I like to pride myself in having a wide span of knowledge of words, but I was incredibly trumped by this word and had to go and look in the dictionary to find out what this word means. But having said that, it means five. I should have known that right from the bat. If the government deems it necessary to extend the validity period of the current valuation in order to allow for modernization and digitization of the system, I don't think the opposition has no room to object to that. So we definitely support that.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at to see if there was any previous legislation amendments for situations like this, because we do understand that this is the 2015 evaluation that we're talking about, and if this is a 5-year term, The next year in which those evaluations should have been updated would have been in 2020, which we all know was right in the midst of COVID. So that would have been difficult to do. But I looked and I saw that there was a similar amendment done in 1996 and then in 2014, but there was no amendment done for 2020 to allow for a postponement. So I wanted to ask the minister, was that an oversight that 2020 it was not done, or if it wasn't necessary, is this legislation today necessary? If I could just get some clarity on that, I would appreciate it. But I do see why the postponement is necessary, and we on the opposition, we support this. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Marcus Jones, opposition leader. Would any other senator care to speak on this bill? Hearing none.
Madam President, if yourself and my colleagues would just bear with me while I retrieve that answer. Thank you.
Yes, indeed.
But while I wait, I will say that I've been advised by the technical team that quinquennial actually means 5 yearly. So yes, I had to practice it, and I think I did well in my remarks. Okay, so if I could, Madam President, yes, we all agree that during the pandemic, which is once in a century type event, there were many different things in all different arenas, which either were suspended or canceled or postponed. So I'm advised that the 2020 revaluation was canceled, not actually postponed, whereas it was canceled altogether. And obviously, due to the pandemic and the rental market, it just would not have made sense to do it at that point. And it provided additional stability, obviously, for businesses, homeowners, et cetera, and during those economic times. So it was actually canceled, whereas this is a postponement. And I believe that.
Yes, you can move your bill now. Just these 3 pages. I probably printed and left it on my desk.
With that said, Madam President, I move that Rule 26 be suspended in respect of this bill.
Is there any objection to that motion? No objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I move that the bill entitled, give me 1 second because it is quite a title, the Land Valuation and Tax Postponement of Preparation of Draft Valuation List, Amendment Act 2025, be now read a third time.
Is there any objection to the third reading? No objection.
Thank you. And Madam President, I move that the bill do now pass.
Is there any objection to the passage of the bill? No objection. The bill is passed. Thank you, Senator Minister. And we'll move on now with Minister Caesar. We'll move on to the next item, and that is the second reading of the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025, and that's in the name of Senator Misha Fubler, the Junior Minister for the Cabinet Office and Digital Innovation. Senator Fubler, you can present your bill.
Madam President, my understanding was that the second reading of the bill would happen next week.
Did he say it was going to be next week?
Thank you. I'd move to defer the reading till next week.
Oh, so the bill. Yes, that's fine. So then we have, so that will be carried over then till next week. And so which one is he carrying over? This one.
I move that both bills, the Parliamentary Election Amendment Act 2025 and the Building Amendment Act 2025, be deferred until next week.
Till next week. Thank you. Then both will be carried over till next week. Thank you very much, Senator Fabler. We'll move on now to item number 14, motions. There are none. Item number 15, congratulatory and or obituary speeches. Would any senator care to speak on this heading? Senator John White, Vice President, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to offer condolences to the family of Lynn Doyles. Lynn, when I joined BFNM back in 1992, she was the HR manager and she lived well into her 90s. And I saw an obituary in the paper. So I'd like to extend condolences to her family on her recent passing. Thank you, Madam President.
Would any other senator care to speak? Senator Tannock, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. As mentioned earlier today, I would like to, in addition to extend my congratulations to the recipients of the Ministry of Education's scholarships, I would also like to extend my congratulations to the 27 students who received the ABIC Education Awards. The Association of Bermuda International Companies Education Awards have been in existence for the past 48 years. With luminaries such as Patrick Tannock being award recipients, and so we can see the fruits of that bear out. And I would like to, and it was $800,000 raised, which is the highest amount raised, I should say. But I would especially like to congratulate the 28th awardee, which would be the awardee for our new category of career shifter. So this is the first year that we are actually awarding an adult who is in one industry and would like to enter international business. So we had 27 scholars come from a variety of schools in Bermuda, and then we have the 28th as a career shifter. And my hope is that we can continue to encourage persons who would like to have the skills to shift careers to do so. So congratulations to the award winners and to the scholarship committee.
Thank you, Senator Tannock. Senator Foley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the organizers, volunteers, and participants of this year's Grace Island Summer Camp program. I had the pleasure of going down there on Monday to see the kids off and go off on the boat. And it was on a boat that I remember when I was a teenager, and that boat's still around. So it was good to see the boat still here in working order. These camps provide or continue to provide a safe, nurturing, and spiritually enriching environment for Bermuda's young people, offering them the opportunity to disconnect from the distractions of modern life and reconnect with nature, community, and personal growth. I especially want to commend the efforts of the Evangelical Church of Bermuda and Word of Life Bermuda, whose dedication ensures that our children and teens are encouraged, inspired, and equipped with values that will guide them well into the future. Bermuda is certainly stronger because of these programs. So I wanted to congratulate the effort that's being done here to all that are involved. A second congratulations that I'd like to present on behalf of our colleague, Senator Cunningham, who would like to congratulate Team Bermuda at the 2025 Island Games in Orkney. Now, if anyone doesn't know where Orkney, that's Orkney, sorry. It is located off the northeastern coast of Scotland. And we want to give special recognition to Taylor Carrick, who claimed our delegation's first medal of the games, which was held yesterday. Now, Taylor displayed remarkable skill and tenacity on the squash court, earning a well-deserved silver medal in the men's single finals. And he narrowly conceded to Orkney's Finlay Scott. So after two grueling five-game semifinal matches, Taylor advanced to the final and brought home Bermuda's first medal of these games. Madam President, with this medal, Taylor has opened Bermuda's campaign in Orkney, and we extend our heartfelt gratitude to him, his coaches, and the Bermuda Squash Association for their dedication, exemplary sportsmanship. And we look forward to eager anticipation to more strong performances from Bermuda's athletes in the days ahead. Thank you so much, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Foley. Yes, Senator Jones, Marcus Jones, Opposition Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like for this chamber to extend condolences to the family of the late Linda Ann Marie Franks Greaves, the wife of Franklin Bucky Greaves. Her and her husband opened a popular clothing boutique called Solo in Bermuda House Lane in the late 80s. I don't know if folks in this chamber remember that. Linda was well known within the insurance industry and climbed the corporate ladder of numerous firms, namely Scandia Re, Odyssey Re, and finally Chubb, where she retired as VP of Claims in 2019. Linda left behind a legacy of mentorship, helping many young professionals who came up behind her. She leaves behind her husband, Franklin, and daughter, Sophia, who followed her footsteps in the insurance business. She'll be remembered for her style, her creativity, generosity, her commitment to excellence, love of family, and for her love of God. Secondly, Madam President, I'd like to extend condolences to the family of the late Ivan Bootsy Smith, a true St. Georgian and ambassador for Bermuda. He was a celebrated and well-known employee of U.S. Airways. His clear, distinctive voice welcomed visitors in Bermuda at the airport, and he always presented himself as a true gentleman. He was also a dedicated and knowledgeable taxi driver. He's survived by his wife, Laverne Smith, and children, Myron and Vanessa. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. No, which one's first? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to give condolences to the family of Diane Russell, the wife of Raymond Russell. She is the beloved mother of Raymond Russell Jr., Reverend Dr. Maria Seaman, her son-in-law, Campito Seaman, Allison Russell, Jamal Charles. She has numerous grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. She was a pillar in the community who loved the Lord. I would just want to extend my condolences to them. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsay Simmons. Now, Senator Fubler, Misha Fubler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. A few congratulations I have on the list here. First, to the Corporation of Hamilton for the recent Summer Sunday Fun Day. I was in attendance with my family, and it was definitely well produced, and they had a great time. So kudos to them. Also to Out Bermuda and at Pride Bermuda for their successful Pride Week, punctuated by the party in the park and march through Hamilton, well attended. Again, kudos to them and all of the volunteers. I think one of our colleagues was actually one of the volunteers today. She's not here today, but to Senator Cunningham as well. Congratulations. And also to the Bermuda Philharmonic Society. That same weekend, they had an enjoyable evening. This was July 5th in the Dockyard. Several of the performers were students, so a special acknowledgement to them as well. And that ends my list of congratulations. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Fabio. Would any other senator care to speak? Oh, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Caesar.
Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you. I bring sad condolences to my family on the passing of Yvette Lynn Wilson Baxter. She was my grandfather's sister and was laid to rest on Tuesday, June 24th, and just wanted to express my condolences to the family, my many cousins, and wish them comfort with their memories of her. Also, I did mention previously, but would like to selfishly again, because I did actually take part in the homegoing service for Dr. Melvin Bassett. he was laid to rest as well. I was invited to give remarks about my relationship with him. And as one would know, as an educator of a quarter of a century in Bermuda, of over a quarter of a century in Bermuda, he touched the lives of many young people. And so again, I give my condolences to his daughter Rashika, her husband, Pastor Joseph Ferbert, his sister Barbara Dillis, his grandchildren Micaiah, Eli, Eden, Marcus, and Isaiah Ferbert. And I'd like to end on a light note by again extending my congratulations to all graduators and leavers at the end of this school year. I want to wish all students the best in their coming years, whether they are going on for tertiary education, entering the workforce, going into a vocation, and those that will be re-entering in their next year of education. Just wishing all a wonderful summer, and congratulations again to those who have graduated and are moving on. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Crystal Caesar. But any other senator? Yes. Minister Wilkerson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Let me start by joining certainly with Senator Jones in the condolences for the family of Linda Greaves. She was indeed one of the front runners, I think, back when we didn't even know these careers were possible. And she was there, and certainly a woman of grace, as is her daughter Sophia. And so quite a loss for the something's buzzing. Quite a loss to the community, and for sure, and certainly to her family. I also want to join on a more positive note the sentiments expressed by Senator Tannock in relation to the ABIC awards and the awardees. I think it is fantastic that ABIC is recognizing in this way a career shifter. Certainly, I was part of one of the early initiatives out of the organization for corporate racial equity, initiating career shifter forums. And so to see, I think that recognition with an education award is entirely positive. And I would add, I too am an ABIC scholar. And, I owe to that organization certainly my start many, many years ago as a Hopewell scholar. And finally, Madam President, you will recall when we were last in this chamber, I sent out some congratulatory remarks and well wishes to the athletes of the Bermuda Pacers Track Club who were going abroad to Canada to compete. And members of the public, and certainly in this chamber, might have heard that group of young athletes did exceedingly well. So for 40 athletes who went to Canada, they hold 51 medals, including 21 gold medals. And shining stars among them in the really, really young athletes were Sky Ferbert and Elliot Davich, who were top under 9 participants. And in this forum, I should point out, Madam President, that under 9 really means these athletes are 7 years old. Yeah. And I think colleagues would have heard me give congratulations and good wishes to my own granddaughter, Diamond Morris, who performed exceedingly well. We are so proud of her. She took gold in the 800 meters, silver in the 400 meters, and came back with 2 gold medals in relay, the 4x100 meters, and the relay medley, where she ran the 800 meters. And her 800 individual was a personal best. And I think sometimes, Madam President, when the kids leave, as was my conversation with her, she's 8 years old, so competing in the under 10 category. It was, when she left, she said, yes, I'm going to get medals. And me, I'm saying, well, it's an international competition. There are kids from Jamaica, Barbados, the US, and Canada, trying to temper her expectations. But Madam President, it just goes to show that when they put their minds to it, we can't put our expectations on their ambition.
Right.
And so certainly she came back with that gold medal and a personal best. So thank you, Madam President, for the opportunity to congratulate these young athletes in this
Thank you. I'm
forum.
sure the entire Senate body will join you in congratulations to those young people.
Thank you.
And Senator Tannock?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I must apologize, Madam AG, for leaving you off the list of luminary ABIC Award recipients. My apologies. You are indeed proof positive of the value of such awards.
No worries, Senator Tannock. I realized that I had a different name in that day.
Thank you. And I would just like to associate myself with the condolences expressed by Minister Crystal Caesar for Dr. Melvin Bassett, because I did attend. It was a wonderful sending off ceremony. So with that, we'll move on now to item number 16, adjournment. Minister Wilkerson.
Madam President, I move that the Senate now adjourn to, what is it? The
Next
23rd, July 23rd. I was about to say 22nd. I was like, that is not a Wednesday, to July 23rd.
23rd. Thank you. Would any senator care to speak? Senator Lindsay Simmons, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise today not only as a senator, but as a survivor. 21 years ago, my life changed forever. I was sexually assaulted, I was stabbed, and I could have died. But Madam President, I survived. And because I survived, I have a responsibility, a voice. And I will use that voice today to speak out, not just for myself, but for every woman, man, and child suffering silently in abusive homes across the island. Because, Madam President, domestic abuse is not just a private matter, it is a national crisis. And we can no longer afford silence. We cannot be complacent with our inactions. Madam President, numbers don't lie. If you allow me, I would like to give the latest statistics from the Bermuda Police Service for the period of July 1st to July 15th.
You certainly may.
Thank you. Domestic incidents. A total of 6 domestic-related incidents were reported. 2 involved verbal disputes only. 4 escalated into physical assaults, including minor wounding, biting, and actual bodily harm. Status. All cases have been referred to the Domestic Abuse Liaison Officer and are being jointly managed with the Vulnerable Persons Unit, the VPU. Supported and investigations remain ongoing. But Madam President, let's be clear. 1 case is one too many. 6 in just 15 days is deeply alarming. And we must ask ourselves, how many more incidents go unreported? How many victims are afraid to call for help, especially when their abusers control the money, the home, or the children? The human toll, Madam President. Every day I hear stories. A young mother who is afraid to leave because she has children to feed. A woman trapped in financial stranglehold, unable to fight back in court because her abuser has the money, the power to bury her in legal battles. Madam President, justice should not just be for sale. The barrier survivors face. Domestic abuse is not only physical, it is emotional, psychological, financial, and legal. Survivors are made to feel powerless at every turn. I just want to give my personal take on when being questioned by the police, when we feel the courts fail us, when we feel that we have no safe place to go, when there are while we are being financially bullied. I do think from 21 years ago to now, Madam President, we have shifted. We are speaking more about it. But people have to feel safe. And I believe that we are moving in the right direction to help people feel safe, to speak about these stories. Because I know firsthand. But I'm here today in this chamber because someone believed in me, because I fought to reclaim my life, because I had to. And I'm here to say no more. Madam President, again, the progress. I want to pause to recognize that this government is taking steps in the right direction. I am proud that today in this chamber I was able to report on the domestic abuse specialist. It is definitely a critical and vital role that will strengthen how we identify, support, and respond to victims and survivors. This, Madam President, is a meaningful step, a step that we should not take for granted, and it must be the first of many. We must now ensure that this specialist is empowered, resourced, and enabled into a broader system of prevention, protection, and accountability. What must change? This is not just about raising awareness, it is about action. Violence begins long before the first punch is thrown, before the first person screams in your face. Let us teach our young people about healthy relationships and consent. We need to have this in schools, youth clubs, and churches. Let's break the cycle before it begins. So, Madam President, I give my promise. I send her not as a victim, but as a voice, and I shall not be silent. Not when our women are crying behind closed doors, not when our children are being raised in fear, not when survivors are suffering in silence because of money, shame, or lack of support. The fight against domestic abuse is not just a personal one. It is a universal one. And it is time for this Senate to act with urgency and unity. Let's be the generation of leaders who did not turn away. Let's be the parliament that passes laws with teeth, with heart, and with humanity. Let us protect the vulnerable and prosecute the violent, because Bermuda is too small for silence and too strong to turn our backs now. Madam President, we need to stop asking, why didn't she leave? And start asking, what has failed her? If money keeps her silent, we must give her the voice. If courts are used as weapons, we must balance the scales. Madam President, I say we stand up together and combat domestic violence. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Lindsey Simmons. Would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Yes, Senator Fubler. Misha Fubler, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I will be brief, but I wanted to ensure that I capture before we wrap for the summer an appeal to the motoring public. We've seen, it seems fairly persistent in the local media, issues of collisions and injuries. And again, I just want to ask people to put their phone down, just wait until they get where they're going, or pull over somewhere where it's safe to use it. I think most days when I commute into the city, I can find one or several people distracted while driving by their phones. And so I think it is imperative, especially as we move into the cutmat season where the social consumption of intoxicating substances increases, that we take the time to at least not add the distraction of electronic devices while operating the vehicles. And secondly, an appeal to those on mopeds who find it too inconvenient to buckle their helmets. I, as someone who operates a moped regularly, I find it baffling at the thought of putting the helmet on your head without strapping it up, rendering it relatively useless if you were to actually need it. I think you don't need to look far for instances of people who are kind of advocates for the end of helmet mandatory usage, actually finding untimely demises. There was a lawmaker in the U.S., right, who was riding his motorcycle. He's a big advocate for don't make me wear a helmet, and he got into a crash and both himself and his significant other perished as a result of not wearing one. Right, and like I struggle to find the logic behind it. Like, is it you're trying to save some time? The 5 to 7 seconds it takes to strap it up, does that really, or maybe it's a comfort thing? You know, maybe get a more appropriately sized helmet if it's uncomfortable to do up the strap. But again, you know, do yourself the favor. Maybe you think, okay, well, I'm an exceptional at operating this bike. I'm not going to get into an accident. That doesn't account for others on the road who use their cell phone in their car, striking you, and then you being an excellent rider has no impact on that situation. And while the fatality rate is still, it's not in the hundreds yet, there are, I would argue, hundreds. I tried to look for some recent statistics. It wasn't available, but I will continue to investigate that around people who have permanent injury as a result, especially to their cognitive ability. And you can keep that in mind, even if, you survive that incident. If your ability to think is impacted, think how that will affect your ability to live in our capitalist society where you need to be able to earn money, which is often tied to your ability to think well. And on that note, I hope everyone has an enjoyable holiday season. I guess I'll touch on that again in our last sitting next week. But, as you make your way around the roads of Bermuda, again, don't have to look far to hear people complaining about the safety aspect of just the road condition itself. Don't add to that by also using your cell phone and increase your chances of survival by strapping up your helmet as you operate your bike. Thank you, Madam President.
And thank you, Senator Misha Fabler. Would any other senator care to speak on the motion to adjourn? Hearing none. And senators, thank you for your attendance and the work this morning. And we will now adjourn until next week, July the 23rd. Be safe and enjoy your time.